You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, and exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, begin Disney. Ride Michelle till the storm is high. Ride Michelle after the storm.
Yeah, where you been? You been ducked off for a minute. They don't know I've been depressed, but you know I'm in it. I never thought I was enough, so I was finished. Had to really talk to God, and I had to handle life's hard tests, hard stress, feeling a complete mess, really getting fed up. And anything they say don't matter, cause I got my bread up. I really got my faith up, forgot the insecurities, I had to pick my head up. And all my friends gone, so I'm solo dolo, getting through these long nights, screaming yellow, yellow. But I'm
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Six Screens Telenetwork, a program after the storm with our good friend DeLon and Gail. And they do have a guest tonight, so we're looking forward to the program tonight. Hello, Gail. I'm going to bring you on. Then I'm going to bring on DeLon, and you guys are looking great tonight.
Hello.
So you're doing good. You're doing good. Look at you. My goodness, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for always looking good coming here on the Six Screens. You know, I mean, you really look at this occasion as being somewhat, we're kind of like we're kind of like going to a wedding or something, right? You guys are always dressed up and you're looking good. So anyway, so tell us what's going on tonight.
Well, hello, everybody. I just want to say hi first before we get started and jump into it. I hope everybody's having an amazing weekend. All right, Gail, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Hey, DeLon. Oh, no, you're good. We're just glad to have you back. You know, we've missed you for a couple of episodes because of, things going on in your family that we're sad to hear of, but then also good things like your daughter's video release.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to update the song to that new song, Believe in Me. I love the message. Her music is so upbuilding, the Raya Michelle. So shout out to Raya.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're super excited.
So we're glad to have you back tonight. Yeah, we're excited about our guest tonight too, because everybody has a story, right? And sometimes they may sound the same. Like, oh, it's the same as this story, but no, it's your story, and everyone has the right to tell their story. And so I'm going to turn it over to you tonight.
All right.
Hand the interviewing reins over to you tonight for our special guest. I'll let you introduce her.
Exactly. And I'm cheesing because I'm just super excited. We're always excited to have guests here on the show because just like Gail said, we all have a story to tell. And each story is different because it's our own personal story. And that's what makes it so amazing, because all of our journeys, they may be somewhat similar, but they're actually different because we've walked a different life, right? And so but as Jimmy mentioned on the prior show, which that was a really good show, it was good seeing Kimmy and Mikey. I'm telling you, that show was definitely fire. So shout out to you, Jimmy. Great show. And not great, but excellent show. And as Jimmy said, we're here to keep exposing the Watchtower. And I just want to say this first because we just want you all to know we're not here to be negative per se about the Watchtower, but we're here to expose the Watchtower. Is so much to expose, and this is like a never-ending story, and we just want to continue to get that story out there. So I just want to say that first. All right, so without further ado, everybody, I would like for you to help us welcome our guest tonight, our beautiful and amazing guest. Her name is Keziak. Welcome, Keziak, to After the Storm.
Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for being with us. So are you still nervous?
I am still a little nervous. Yes.
Well, we're just having a conversation, so
okay.
And it's a safe zone here, so you're safe with us.
Right. I appreciate you allowing me on and allowing me to share some of my story.
Yes, more than welcome. We're just thankful to have you here, and thank you for being willing to come on after the storm to take us through your storm walk-in so we can see where you are today after the storm. And that's the purpose of After the Storm.
Mhm.
All right. And so I would like to, we'll just kind of go ahead and jump just right on into the interview.
Okay.
Kazaya, and your name is very beautiful, by the way. I just want to make sure I
Thank you.
share that with you. You're welcome. So I want to kind of talk about your journey. But before we go into the full journey, just kind of we're gonna start from the beginning and we'll take it up through today. Um, One, were you raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, Keziah, or is that something that became that happened maybe in your teens or what? Tell us
That
about that.
So I was basically raised in as a Jehovah's Witness. I try and restrain myself from saying the
The
truth.
truth. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, so I was basically raised as a Jehovah's Witness. My mom, she was not uh, a JW. My father was raised a Jehovah's Witness, but he was never baptized. So she was exposed to the religion through my father, who left. He left when we were very, very young, but she went on to, she studied and then she got baptized when I was just a baby. So it's basically all that I knew,
Mhm.
growing up.
Mhm.
Okay. So your dad was raised basically as a witness and your mom wasn't. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of talk about that first because that has a lot to do with your journey as a witness and then again where you are today. Did your dad, with him being raised, let me back up. Was your dad baptized? Was he ever baptized as a witness? And if so, was he
N-
baptized at a young age?
No, he was never baptized.
Okay.
My grandmother, his mom, was a faithful witness until she died. Uh, but he he would study off and on and attend meetings off and on. I was not close to my father. He was not in our life, so my opinion of him is very low. But I
Oh.
always felt like my impression of his interaction with Jehovah's Witnesses was always um, it was what when it would benefit him. So he was like a fair weather Jehovah's Witness. So if he saw a sister or a woman that was attending meetings that he was interested in, then all of a sudden he would feel the need to study and work on getting baptized to try, as he closed the deal with her, you
Oh
know.
wow.
Or like I know there was a one point where there was an elder who he had grown up with, and the elder worked at the power plant. This was in Detroit, and my father wanted to get a job at the power plant. So all of a sudden, he wanted to study with this elder, and he got the job. So it was kind of like if he felt like he could get something out of it, then he would. But he never made that commitment to get baptized.
Wow.
Yes, I mean, and that's and I'm not saying every single Jehovah Witness, but that's what I'll call an idea of the society, of the Watchtower, things that benefit them. If it
Right.
benefits them, they go after, it, right? And so it's just really something that was embedded into him. Little did he know, as being raised, I'll say as being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses,
Mhm.
right? Um, that's the way I kind of
Excuse me, Delon.
sure.
What we do here is the telephone line goes off every 6 hours. So just take about a minute break here. I'm going to shut it down and we're going to start it all over again. The telephone line does go off every 6 hours. So just hang in there. We'll be right back, you guys. Just be very patient and we'll get
Okay.
right back on here. That happens every 6 hours. It's kind of a shame. It always happens during your program.
Live six
I don't,
screens conference
I don't know
call.
why that happens, but it does.
We thank you for
We'll get
joining
you
in.
right back in, so don't you
To
worry.
speak up and talk, press star 6 on your
Yeah,
telephone.
what it is a
When you are
conference
done
call
talking,
line
press star 6
only
to mute
allows me
yourself.
6 minutes, and they shut
Remember,
it off.
when you
So
are
they'll be coming
unmuted,
back in
your
here.
phone is a microphone and picks up on all noises in the background. We hope you enjoy the programs tonight. You will now be placed into the conference.
If you are the host,
press star now. Please enter your. Thank you. There
Yeah,
are
so
4
that's what happens all
participants
the
in the
time.
conference.
Yeah,
That's
there's
okay. We don't mind.
so we still got a lot of people still on the telephone line, so they're listening in. So you guys go ahead, and sorry for the delay. I'm sorry.
No
No worries,
problem.
Rick. No
Delon,
worries.
just a second. There was a really nice comment for Keziah in the comment section from Jay. It says, "You are with friends. Don't be nervous."
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Just
And like
forward
Gil
that
said,
to
it's
you.
it's a safe zone. So thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Jay. That's a great refresher too. It is a safe zone. And so because I wanted to ask you, so with your dad being the one that was originally, I'll say the witness, if you will, or practicing witness or
The
whatever
recording
we'll call it, right? Um, so with your mom being introduced to the religion through your dad, did your mom say how her family felt about her when she first became one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, it's funny because I really, when you're a child, I think most children never really think about the perspective of their grandparents or even their parents, right? Um, but my mom never really, I don't ever remember her talking about um, her parents and how, if they had any kind of feeling about her being a Jehovah's Witness. When we were younger, I know my grandmother, uh, my maternal grandmother, she would come to visit us once a year, and I knew my mom's parents weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, but when my grandmother would come to visit us, she'd always go to the Kingdom Hall with us, and she never said anything against the witnesses. So it was something that it wasn't until later on, once I left the religion, is actually when unfortunately I made the effort to start to get to know my mother's parents, and then I learned that they really respected my mother's choice to choose, her beliefs, and they wanted to
Mm-hmm.
support her in that, even though they did not agree with it. My grandmother even said that she thought it was unfortunate that I pursued that, because she felt like there were so many opportunities available to me that I gave up so that
Yeah.
I could do that. But they were
Yeah.
very respectful.
And that's really good to hear. And that's one thing that I was going to mention a little later too. You just really hit the nail head on, because Gail will tell you. And Gail actually mentioned it to me first, and that's what made me realize, you know what, you're right. I will never know how great I could have been based
Right.
on, and this that's just my story, but based on how I was raised, because I couldn't do anything. I was shut down from everything. And so you just literally kind of said the same thing with what your grandmother said, that, so many opportunities were out there
Mm-hmm.
for you, right? But of course, at the time,
Right.
you didn't know it, right? Because neither did I.
Yeah,
So
I didn't look at them as opportunities. I
that's
saw them
right.
as obstacles that Satan was placing in front of me. So,
Right.
I passed it up.
That's right. I said I'll
Mhm.
never know if I have a beautiful singing voice because I couldn't pursue it,
Right.
so, or acting. I'll never
Or
know
how
to the
fast
very
you can
best.
run.
Yes,
Right.
because that's what I was excellent at. Running was my thing, and I was one of the fastest girl here. I would have loved to have been a track star. So
Wow.
now I'm just gonna run from here like Jimmy to the bathroom, and that's about it. That's it. Um, Want to also ask you, being that your grandparents, they respected your mom's wish to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now we know that's opposite of what we're taught, and it
Right.
really is. They would say, that we want to basically bring others, into our religion, into that religion, excuse me, not ours, but theirs, but into the religion. I'm just kind of speaking back when I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But we didn't respect other people's right to
Right.
have their own religion, right? So were there any family members, because this is kind of like a two-part question, any family members, did your mom shut down any family members due to being one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, I mean, ironically, even though her parents were very supportive of her, and she was a single parent. Like I said, my father left when we were very young, and so my mom raised three of us by herself, and it was
Wow.
a struggle. And my grandparents were always there. Her parents were always there to help financially or whatever. And towards the end of their life, uh, as her parents, their health declined, she refused to talk to them because they wouldn't entertain the religion. And the only time that she would make the effort to talk to them, she would make a point to just share scriptures with them. And I know, talking to my grandparents at that point, I was out of the religion at that point, and they were very hurt by that. Even when my grandfather died, my grandmother had to call me to get a hold of my mom because my mom would not answer her calls, and she wouldn't. Like I said, I was out of the religion by this time, and when I tried to call my mom, she wouldn't even answer my call, and I had to tell her by text message that her father had died.
Oh my God.
So it was. And even when her mother died about a year later, and it was about a week before she passed, she went into the hospital, and I knew it was close. And so I messaged my mom and I said, look, you need to call your mom. You need to, because I don't know how long she's going to last. And thankfully, she did reach out to her, and my grandmother was grateful for that, but my grandmother said that all she basically did was share scriptures with her.
Oh,
So
man.
it was, it was unfortunate the way that she treated them, because they never tried to dissuade her from, her faith, and always supported her in whatever way they could. And it was just like, just because they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, she basically shunned them when they weren't, they weren't disfellowshipped or anything, but yeah, basically shunned them.
Wow.
And that's hurtful. I mean, I'll
Right.
say this first. It is very hurtful because when you think about trying to talk to somebody about God or anything for that matter, to push them away. And I'll say to push them away, because that's really what it was. They were actually very supportive, like you said. So it's not like they were making fun. Like, I know I have family members that made fun of us for being Jehovah Witnesses. They would
Yeah.
crack jokes and all kind of things. But here you have her parents that were supportive, whether they agreed or not, but they were very supportive of her
Right.
decision to do so. However, she wasn't, basically, if you was kind of like, and I'll say really, I'm going to say really no fault of her own. She learned something, right? And then she thought that it was the right thing to do, just like we did. But then she pushed her parents. She was pushing her parents away. Um, and yet it's very undeserving. And we're gonna, because I keep want to jump to something, so I'll stay on track here. I want to
Okay.
kind of ask you this before I go into the next part. Like you said, we as little kids, sometimes we don't pay attention to those type of things, like how our parents are affected, what the other family members have to say, or how they feel about their religion. But as you were a little girl and then growing into your teenage years, let's say like junior high, maybe even high school, would you say that at that moment, um, was your life changed at that moment based on your classmates knowing that you were one of Jehovah's Witnesses? And then after that, if you can let us know when you were like in junior high or high school, how did you um, how did you stand tall, if you will, for your faith as one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, I'll say this, that we were born, me and my brother and sister, we were born in California. And while I was there, I really did not. My mom, she suffered from depression, and she was eventually diagnosed with bipolar. And so when we were smaller, there were a lot of we never had a family study. I knew I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I knew that I couldn't salute the flag. I knew I couldn't celebrate birthdays and holidays, but I had no idea why. And we would go through spurts where it was like we would go to the meetings regularly and go out and field service regularly for like a month, and then not be there for 3 months. So it wasn't, it wasn't something that I felt when I was younger. I didn't feel like it was a major part of my life. Even, when you're small and you pretend to be adults and you talk about what you're going to become, when I was younger, I never saw myself as a Jehovah's Witness. I imagined doing other things. And it wasn't until when I was 11 years old, there was a lot of turmoil in our house, just like a lot of things going on. And we were getting ready to move to Montana. And we had not been to the Kingdom Hall in months, and a couple of elders came to our house. And I remember they knocked on the door. My mom kind of opened it a crack, and then she closed the door, and she told us to get into a room. And she closed the door, and then she let the elders in. And I remember hearing the elders tell her, the one thing that stood out was that they said, Armageddon is close. You don't want to be destroyed when Armageddon comes. And that impacted me. So I had never, even though we went to I never paid attention when we were at the meetings. So that was the first time it hit me, like we can die. And it impacted me so much. That was the first time I remember praying. After they left and we came out from the room, I remember going into the room by myself and praying to Jehovah that he would save my family. And then we went to Montana, and it seemed like there was a lot of dysfunction in my house. And I think the Kingdom Hall turned into a secure, consistent place for me to go. And it just happened that there was always someone, like families in the congregation, that would make sure that I made it to the Kingdom Hall. So I started going to the Kingdom Hall with other families on my own, because my mom would go through these spurts where it was like she'd go to the meetings and then she wouldn't be there for, a length of time. And so the friends from the Kingdom Hall really helped me to be regular out in service and at the meetings. And that's where I started to, as they say, make the truth my own. Yeah. And so by the time I tried to get baptized when I was 12. And this is one thing, I don't know if it's like this everywhere in the country, but in our particular congregation, since I came from a single parent family, there's a lot of stigma around that, where they don't expect a lot from you. Yeah. And so I tried, right. So I tried to get baptized when I was 12, and I was serious about it. And the elder sat down with me and went over the questions and then said, we don't think you're ready. And it was devastating, but I tried again when I was 13, and they let me get baptized then. But it seemed like the more that I took the religion seriously, the wider the divide was created between me and my mom, which is ironic because she was a witness, but for some reason, it caused a lot of friction. And but as far as school, I will say school to me was I got along with everyone at school fine. And I know there were moments when I tried to witness to the kids at school, but because there was so much turmoil in my house, and I really did not, school was like the least of my concerns. Yeah. And so I don't remember ever having to, feeling like I needed to take a stand at school, Yeah. So and then I ended up I got baptized at 13, and uh, because there's a lot of problems at home. I think my mom, like my 8th grade year of school, my grades dropped. Like the last half of school, I just stopped trying, and my grades dropped. And I think my mom allowed me to homeschool because she didn't want the school asking questions about what was going on.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
I saw it as an opportunity to serve Jehovah more. So I started pioneering when I think I was about 14 and a half when
Wow.
I started
Wow.
pioneering. And even that was, I remember one of the elders in our congregation, this older brother, him and his wife kind of took me under their wing when I started pioneering. And he said to me that when the elders met to discuss my application for pioneering, they did not want to approve it.
Whoa.
But he said, I pushed for you because I felt like you sincerely wanted to do this. So yeah, the long version to answer your question.
No, that's actually interesting because I think about, like you said, they didn't want to approve you being baptized initially, and then they did. And then at the age of, to me, just I think about when I was 14, geez, such a sweet, tender age, when then, those when you're trying to get baptized or when you are baptized at that age, the onlookers, the adults, they think, oh, that's so good, and this little one is so spiritual. But really, honestly, and I'm sure I may be wrong as far as every person, and again, I'm not saying every person, but really at that age, to me, it was just too early on my side because
Yeah,
I was just getting to know who I was at that age, right? And so,
right.
but just to kind of go back, at that time, you feel like this is the right thing to do. And I want to touch on something really important. Your mom, just in just a brief moment of that, because I know that can be pretty sensitive. It's a sensitive topic.
Hmm.
With your mom's depression, now that you're older, you've learned the Jehovah Witness religion, because now you're older. Would you say today, when you look back, that perhaps, even if it's not all DNA right, would you say that perhaps her being one of Jehovah's Witnesses had an effect, um, on her becoming depressed?
I I don't know if I would say that I think it enabled a lot of things, because it to me, this isn't the case with everyone, but um it's a religion that produces victims
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
enables victims. So and you never really have to take responsibility for yourself. It's always, everything is Satan. Satan did this to me. Satan is attacking me.
Mm.
Yes.
There's rare instances when I remember talks about, personal choice and taking responsibility, but ultimately everything kind of fell under, we're living in Satan's world. He's constantly attacking us, constantly trying to affect our faith. So there's nothing that talks about, making good decisions, uh,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, thinking about how your decisions have played a part in what you're dealing with. There's really nothing like that. And so I feel like, um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was the source, because I think she probably had mental issues even before she became a Jehovah's Witness. I think that's probably what
Mm.
appealed to her as far as the witnesses, that it was a place
That's
where
it.
they would enable that kind of behavior.
Mm.
Yep. And like you said, we would then we would typically say everything was Satan. And one thing I've come to learn after that is, yes, Satan has a part to play in things, but no, it's not. Like you said, we have a personal responsibility, that we have to accept. But we allowed the Watchtower if you will, to really do all the thinking for us. So
Right.
I think that's why Satan was that that middleman, no, that no, not the middleman, that go-to person, because it was either what the Watchtower say or we're living under Satan's rule. It was one
Right.
or two things, it couldn't have been the fact that I'm responsible for my own behavior until it's time to go before the brothers in a committee
Right.
hearing, right? And so
Yeah.
um, that's the only time when it's different. One thing I wanted to ask you, I wanted to kind of go back. I forgot to ask you, with your grandparents not being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, did they celebrate holidays? And if they did, were you all allowed to accept presents from them? Being that your mom hadn't always been one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but your dad was. How did that kind of work out with your family? And
I Yeah, I never remember them ever trying to give us presents.
okay,
When my grandmother would come to visit in the summers, she would buy us stuff and, take us to do activities. But when the holidays came around, I really think they truly respected
yeah,
my mom's decision, and they didn't want to do anything to um antagonize her, try and uh insult
yeah,
her, or anything like that. So I don't remember them ever, even when I was I think I was 16. When I was 16, I went to live with them. I lived with them for a year,
Mm.
and they took me to I was pioneering at the time. They took me to all the meetings at the Kingdom Hall. They would make sure I went out, or that I made it for field service. And there was never even a discussion. I remember even saying, my grandfather, he was not a practicing Catholic, but he always was like, I am Catholic and nothing's going to change that. And there were even times when I would say bad stuff about the Catholic Church, and he never, he wouldn't get mad or anything, or try and refute anything that I said. So
Yeah.
I mean, they were very, very supportive, very respectful.
and see, and again, on the flip side, now isn't that just something? Because we all know how um, going to the Kingdom Hall, um, they do talk about other religions. They're
Yeah,
constantly putting down other religions, and because if you're associated right with that other religion, if it was my aunt or my uncles, because I remember how my mom. Although when I was disfellowship, she always talked to me. She never stopped talking to me. But I do know, like with my auntie and my uncle, her brother and his wife, his wife, she would always be like, thank you, Lord, because they went to church, but she would always say insulting things. And they had to
Mm.
actually end up getting into it too, because my mom, she was mean, and she would say insulting things because they were not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And so therefore she would, I won't say look down upon them, but she would put them down based on their religion.
yeah,
So, see, isn't this just like on the flip side? You have non-witnesses, if you will, that's respecting someone's stance, I guess you will, as a witness, but then the witnesses don't do the same. So, and I have to
right.
highlight that because there are people that are just listening in, or just excuse me, that are just becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or they may not be mindful of that, because again, we're not raised to think that way. And so we kind of have blinders on. And so those are just important little things that lead up to big things. And so that's gonna have us to move forward here. So, with you being baptized, and as a new teenager, what became, and if there's anything that happened that led up to this, we'll include that in there. But what became that eye opener for you to say, you know what, something is wrong here? What happened? And what made you just open your eyes? What set that bell off for you?
Well, it wasn't until years later. I was able to I continued pioneering, and even though I'm very introverted and I was a horrible public speaker, um, really afraid to comment for a long time. It was a struggle to do that. And I will say that's one thing that I'm grateful for, is that it helped me going through that process. It pushed me to, get out in front of people and speak, even though I'm not like, yeah, let's do this. But,
Yeah.
I'm a little more comfortable with it. But yeah, so I continued pioneering, and then I was living in Detroit, Michigan, and that was in 2005 when Hurricane Wilma hit in Florida. And so they asked our congregation if there were any volunteers that would like to, go and help out with hurricane relief work. And I wanted to. I had applied to Bethel several times and
Wow.
never got. They said they'd keep my application on file, but I mean, I'm thankful now. But at the time, I felt like that was I really wanted to go to Bethel. And
All that
so
pioneering didn't get you in, did it? I'm just saying, all that pioneering just didn't get you. It wasn't enough for them to let you in, right?
right, no,
You have to be
actually,
married to
it's
get in, right?
Right.
well, no, well, yeah. I mean, that if you're a sister, yeah, that is one of the biggest keys. But what I was told by an elder from Bethel was that you were almost guaranteed getting accepted if you were like a doctor or an attorney, which is, it's completely contrary, because they tell you have to put Jehovah first and, live a simple life. You don't, you don't go for higher education. Yet, if you go for higher education, then you have more of a chance of getting into Bethel. So
To benefit them again.
exactly. So yeah, and I remember one of the elders said to me, one of the elders in my local congregation, he was like, because I was telling him how devastated I was that I hadn't got accepted to Bethel, and he's like, you know what you need to do? You need to work on getting a degree. And I remember getting so mad at him. I was like, how dare you tell me to, focus on that instead of my ministry? Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm gonna lose my life.
That's
You said on the get
confusing.
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. So yeah, so they asked for volunteers for hurricane relief work, and so I applied. And again, the elders, I was living on my own. I didn't have anyone helping me. So I was worried. I was supporting myself, but obviously pioneering and everything, I wasn't making a lot of money. I didn't even have a car. I was biking everywhere. So I applied, and they were like, we have to tell you honestly that we really don't think we should approve your application, because you don't have anyone that can help you financially, and we don't want to send you down there and then you become a burden to the friends in the area. And then they say you don't even have a car. And I told them, I was like, if Jehovah wants me to go, then Jehovah's going to make sure I get there. It doesn't matter what you think. All things are possible with God. So, so they approved the application, and I went down to Florida, and I bought a bike. I bought a bike at the Goodwill in Florida, and I biked. I didn't have to do it all the time, because some of the friends started picking me up and taking me to the site for the relief work. But I would bike. It was about 20 miles to where we met for the relief work. So I would do that when I had to. But yeah, that was like where my service to Jehovah peaked. I did that for 6 months. I ended up leaving my job in Michigan and leaving my apartment. And I just went down to Florida for 6 months. I was renting a room from some friends down there and just living off of my savings and loving it. And then when the relief work ended, I ended up staying in Florida, and I started volunteering at one of the assembly halls down there. I would mow the lawn and do, simple maintenance stuff around the facility. And like I said, I was on the top of the world spiritually. I was so happy. But there were like older friends, brothers and sisters. I was 24 at the time.
Okay.
And in JW world, if you're a single sister, 24 years old, you're too old, right? You're getting past your prime. When I was 18, I should have been, trying to get married.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I was, I was working on the Kingdom Hall builds. I was pioneering. I was doing the assembly hall maintenance. And they were saying, it's great that you're doing all of this for Jehovah, but they said it almost seems like you're trying to be a brother, take the position of a brother. And that was troubling to me, because I was not, I was not trying to usurp their authority, their headship.
Right.
I was happy to be, so busy in Jehovah's service. But so that stayed in my mind, and these people that I very much respected kept talking to me about, you need to think about getting married. You need, it's not appropriate for you as a sister to continue doing these things without the headship of a brother. And so that was in the back, even though I wasn't opposed to marriage, but it was like, I am happy.
Right.
Why
even ready?
Exactly. I was like, why break something that or fix something that's not broke, right? I was happy. Did not feel the need to get married, but them saying this to me, and then that was, they kept saying, you don't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name.
Oh yeah.
And so that was really
right. Gil said, what was it that they were saying you didn't want to bring? Why were they saying you didn't want to bring reproach upon Jehovah's?
Because I wasn't trying to get married. I wasn't desperate to get married. I was happy in my service, and so they felt like that it wasn't appropriate. And that if
were
I
you
kept
working?
doing it,
I'm just curious. Were you working?
I had a job. I was cleaning offices, so I would do that at night, and I took care of myself financially. No one had to give me money or anything, so I paid my bills. At that point, I had a car. I was able to pay, for my car. I was paying rent. No one ever had to do anything for me. I lived very simply, but I was happy to do it. I was happy with the way my life was. They just felt like, I needed to put getting married as a priority. And so it just so happened that on one of the days that I was volunteering at the assembly hall, this brother, no, that's okay. So I started, in addition to all of this, I started to learn Haitian Creole. And so at the time, there was no Haitian Creole congregation. They just attended the French congregation. So I started attending the French congregation because I wanted to, in the English, when we went out in the ministry, it was like we could never talk to anyone. We never found anyone at home. And so I started to learn Haitian Creole and French. And so the friends in that congregation said, you should come with us to Belglade, which is a small town, because they need a lot of help with the Haitian Creole. And so I went with them one weekend, and this brother who volunteered at the assembly hall, who I had not noticed before, but when we went to this congregation in Belglade, he recognized me from the assembly hall. And so after that, the first time that I went out there, he showed up at the assembly hall the following week. and asked for my number, and I told him no. And this is really looking back on it, my intuition was great. And unfortunately, because I was in this religion where they tell you that your heart is treacherous, you can't trust yourself, I didn't go with my intuition. My intuition told me, I remember when he left, he asked for my number. I said no, he left. And the sisters there were like, oh, do you know who that is? I can't believe you didn't give him your number. He's an elder. He's a pioneer. He's a training to be a circuit overseer, all this stuff. And I was like, and I told them, I said, you know what? Sometimes those are the worst brothers. And I'm telling you, I should have, it was prophetic. And I should have listened to myself.
Yeah.
But because I started doubting myself and thinking, all of these people have been telling me that I need to, try and pursue marriage. And here's this great brother that just showed interest in me. And even people were saying, this is Jehovah, directing you. And so I was like, how can I, turn my back to this? So I ended up giving him my number. We started dating. We dated for 6 months, and then we were married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and that was the beginning of the end. When we were dating, there were just like a couple of things that, to me, I wouldn't say there were major red flags. Probably now, if something like that happened, I would be like, bye. But at the time, they bothered me. But again, because I doubted myself, and I felt like I really bought into this story that he was very prominent in the religion, but I felt like that defined who he was, that meant that he was a good, honest, faithful brother. And so everything, when I was faced with something that opposed that idea, that facade, I was like, how can I explain this? How can I justify this in my brain in order to continue to support that facade that he was presenting? So I just let it go, and we got married. And from the beginning, it was a course in humiliation. Even, I'm not going to go into detail, but even the honeymoon was not, it was so hurtful and so humiliating. And that first year, it was just a lot of verbal abuse, constantly telling me how embarrassed he was of me, that we were in the Haitian Creole or in the French congregation. And so we would go to a lot of different kingdom halls because he would get invited to give talks. Right. And every time we went to these kingdom halls, he would tell me how embarrassed he was that I couldn't speak the language, I didn't look right, just breaking me down. And then there was the isolation. I didn't know anyone in the French congregation, in the French circuit, or I knew very few people and I didn't know them very well. So I was very isolated. So it just was, that first year was, it was hard. And then I recognized that it was abuse. Yeah. And I recognized, I knew where this was all headed. And I think even that was very difficult for me to deal with, because I felt like I thought I was smarter than that. And to find myself in that situation, it made me feel hopeless. Like there was no way for me to escape that kind of treatment. And so that first year, I just felt like if I just gave in to him, if I, was the good Christian wife and showed him love and bent over backwards trying to meet his demands, then eventually he would respect me and reciprocate love. And it just got worse. And so at the end of that first year, we were invited to go to Pioneer School again. Both of us had been before, but they invited us to go again. And thankfully it was in English. And so I was really looking forward to it. And the Sunday before Pioneer School was supposed to start, we were at the Kingdom Hall. And at the time we lived about an hour away from the congregation that we were attending.
Oh, wow.
And so on that Sunday, we also had to pick up our books for Pioneer School. So we were gonna have to drive an hour in the opposite direction to a Kingdom Hall to pick up our books after the meeting. So the meeting had ended, and in our congregation there were just, I think, 2 or 3 elders at the time. It fluctuated between 2 and 3 elders, and my husband was the presiding overseer at the time. But him and the other elder, there was constantly like a rivalry between them. And I think it was, because they both wanted that top position.
Yeah.
So it was constantly this tug of war. And so on that particular Sunday after the meeting, I just happened to, I was chit-chatting with the other elder, which I never did. And we weren't in a deep conversation or anything. And my husband saw me talking to him. And he lost it. He didn't say anything to the brother at that time, but he was livid. And so we got in the car to drive to this other Kingdom Hall to pick up our books. And he was just screaming at me the whole time and beating his fist, putting it in my face. And that was the first time that I was truly afraid that he was going to do something to me physically. And accusing me of calling me a whore, and that I was, there was something going on between me and this brother. I didn't even have this brother's phone number. It wasn't, it was ridiculous. And so the whole way, an hour drive, he's enraged and screaming and calling me names and beating his fist. And we get to the Kingdom Hall, and then it's, we're brother and sister.
Right. All of a sudden, right. Like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, exactly. So we get to the Kingdom Hall, and it's like we're the good Christians, and get out of the car and, hi, hey, good to see you.
I remember those days.
Right. And we pick up our books, and then we get in the car to leave. And it's the same. He goes back into this, screaming at me. An hour. We're driving an hour back home now. And so right before we got home, we stopped at the gas station, and I was like, I can't take this anymore. And we were just like a few blocks from our home. I got out of the car and I started walking because I was like, I couldn't take anymore. So I'm walking, he gets back in the car and he drives, and he, calls me some names as he drives by me. Don't expect to get in the house, all this stuff. So he drives to the house, and I make it to the house. He had locked me out, which was, at that point I was like, that's fine. I just, want the peace. But then he was blowing up my phone, and then my phone died. And then he came out and was screaming at me because he was like, oh, who are you on the phone with? You won't answer my calls. And about, I don't know, like I ended up, it got dark. We lived in this apartment building. I ended up sitting in the stairwell with my book for Pioneer School. And I was like, I'm just going to, I told Jehovah, I don't care what happens. I just need to get to Pioneer School. That's it. And so in the middle of the night, he comes out, and I'm sitting in the stairwell, and he starts screaming at me, and he's like, you think you're going to Pioneer School? You're not going. And he tried to take my book from me, and I was able to keep it. and he went back inside, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, he finally fell asleep. I was able to get back in the house, sleep for an hour, and then get up so that we could drive to Pioneer School. And we made it there, and it was the time in Pioneer School, not the time once it was over and I had to spend with him, but the time in Pioneer School was so great because I hadn't been in the setting where we were speaking English in a long time. So it was like to be able to express myself in an intelligent way and freely was so refreshing. And I knew by the end of that 2 weeks, I was like, I'm leaving him. I'm not staying in this situation.
Mhm.
So when we Pioneer School ended that weekend, this is another thing. That whole year, he made me sleep in the closet
Mm-mm.
because he said I wasn't good enough to sleep in our bed. So I was sleeping in the closet, which turned out to work out for me because that weekend that we got back from Pioneer School, I'm in my closet and I didn't have very much stuff. So he was sleeping and I was in the closet packing up my stuff in my suitcase. And so like early in the morning, I just like walked out of the closet with my suitcase ready and went down to the car. But unfortunately, he saw me, he caught me.
Oh man.
And he ended up, because I was going to go to my mom's, and he ended up driving me to I had my own car. He wouldn't let me have my car. He said, you can't have your car. I'm going to keep it, but I'll drop you off at your mom's house. So ended up going there and was there for a month. And then I told him I wasn't going to stay in the situation anymore and that I was moving to Belglade, the small town where we were serving. I said I had lost my job too, which did not help my situation with him. But I told him, I said, I'm going to find a job in Belglade and I'm going to move there. And you could stop me if I'm rambling because
Oh no.
anyway,
it's okay.
so we ended up moving to, I was able to find an apartment with no money. And I found a job at the hospital.
Good for
And
you.
yes, and so moved to Belglade, but then there were issues where I found out he was sleeping with some sister in the congregation, and then it eventually, trying to think of the timeline. Anyway, so it eventually, like 2.5 years in, I find out that he has been living in the country illegally. I find this out at the immigration office. And yeah, he tried to we did get into a physical altercation. He tried to beat me up, but I was able to defend myself, so it wasn't like he beat me up, but we beat each other up.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yes.
right?
You defended
Fought
yourself.
back.
Yes.
Fought back. That's good.
That's
Yeah,
good.
so but this stuff with the immigration was really like that was the last straw for me. And I told him that we could fix our marriage, and I wasn't planning on that point. I wasn't planning on going anywhere, but I said, we can fix this and we can move on from this, but you have to be honest with me.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me flat out, he's like, I don't have to tell you anything. My life is none of your business.
The dominating
And
attitude.
yeah, and so we went through the process, or I went through the process to try and make it so that he could stay in the country. And then I told him that I'd have to tell the elders about his legal status or illegal status.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been in the country for 23 years at that point,
Wow.
and never ever had legal status.
Wow.
Hadn't even
Not even
Stayed under
attempted.
the radar.
Right, he hadn't even attempted to get legal status.
not even a green card, alien resident status?
No,
Oh
nope,
wow.
no.
I'm on the
And
edge of my seat.
Right.
yeah, so when I told him that I would have to tell the elders about it, he really lost it. And I went to the elders, and they were shocked. Well, the one elder that I spoke to initially, he was shocked. And he said that they would that the elders would meet with him. And I think they did, but I don't, from what I found out later, one of the presiding overseers said that they encouraged him to work on his marriage.
Mm.
Not
worried about his status. Just work on your marriage, huh?
Right. So I told them, and I was waiting when I first told them, because I knew it was serious. Here he is. He's an elder. He's pioneering. He's training for circuit work, and I knew he was not supposed to be able to do any of that if he was illegal.
Wow.
And so once I told the elders, I was just waiting for the shoe to drop, and it didn't. A month went by, and I just happened to see a brother who was in the circuit work. Him and his wife were in the circuit work, and I told him about what was going on, and he asked me, he said, well, have they done anything? Has he lost his privileges? And I said, no. And he said, well, when did you tell them? And I was like, well, a month ago. And he said, look, especially in these smaller towns, the brothers look out for one another. So he said he probably knows stuff about them. And so they're not going to do anything, they're not going to turn him in because, as far as going to headquarters or anything, or him losing his privileges, because they want to protect themselves. So he said, he told me to call Bethel. He said, call Bethel and report it to them directly. So I did. And Bethel was shocked. And they said, you need to tell the elders to call us immediately. So that started a 2-year process, where 2 years where not the person who was guilty of lying and living this deceptive life had to be subject to interrogation. I was subject to interrogation for 2 years, where I was going back and forth, having to call Bethel and deal with these elders, because I would tell Bethel, this is what's going on, and the elders would sit down and they wanted to know when the last time I had sex with my husband was, all the details about that. And I don't just absurd stuff. And I think they were really trying to get me to reconcile with my husband in order to keep him from losing his privileges. But then when I would tell Bethel that, what was happening, then they would talk to the elders. And so he did end up losing his privileges. But and then he wasn't violent, but he started threatening me. He was going to kill me. He was going to, he wanted to hurt me. And I just felt like it was coming. And there was one point where it was at night, and I was on the phone with one of my friends from Detroit, and he came in and he was screaming at me and banging on the walls and threatening to hurt me. And my friend was begging me to call the police. But I refused, because I was like, well, I don't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name. And she was she was a Jehovah's Witness, but she was begging me. She said, please call the police. And I was in the bedroom with the door closed, and he busted in the door and was threatening me. And I found the courage to stand up to him and tell him firmly, get out. And he backed up while he was still screaming at me, but he backed up and backed out of the room. And so, and I had to barricade myself in the room. But anyways, it eventually I left. And then, like I said, after 2 years of this back and forth with the elders, I finally got to the point where I think that 2 years I was fighting to keep what I thought the religion was. I wanted that reality to, I wanted that to be true. And the more that I met with the elders and the more that I talked to Bethel, I think that delusion was just breaking down. And I really feel like, because it wasn't like they forced me to go through that process, but I subjected myself to it. And I think, looking back on it now, I think I went through that because I just was really fighting to keep that delusion. It was all that I knew. And I really, up to that point, I loved being a Jehovah's Witness. And so by the end of that, it was like one day I knew I was so tired of it. And I had gotten to the point where I hated going out in the ministry. I hated going to the Kingdom Hall. I hated going to the assemblies. And I just wanted a break from it, and ended up doing something to get myself disfellowshipped.
Gail, you remember those words, Gail? Very similar, right?
Very
I did the
similar.
same thing, because
Yeah.
so I can truly, I did the same thing purposely.
We have never heard a story like this. It just shows you that we don't know what the sisters are going through. I
No.
mean, you had this picture perfect marriage. You had the brother that's here, right? You're both pioneering. You're putting on a smiling face, but it was miserable. I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
Well,
But
and I remember one circuit overseer's wife, she told me that she was aware of a little bit about what was going on. And she said to me, she said, a lot of the wives of these brothers are experiencing this. And she said, it's really a matter of you deciding whether you want your husband to keep the privileges or not. She said, a lot of women are willing to make that sacrifice, keep their mouths shut, so that their brothers, or so that their husband can continue to serve.
Oh, wow.
And that's, I couldn't.
It sounds like since from the beginning, when you met him, he started to put your fire out. Your zeal for Jehovah started to go out from the moment you met him. And I almost wonder if someone set him up or assigned him, say, hey, check her out. She's kind of a little bit too zealous over here. We need to bring her down a notch,
Yeah.
I almost wonder if they were like, have you seen her?
Yep.
I feel like because of my family experience, I was already prone to, I had been through verbal mental abuse. And so I knew I was susceptible to getting into relationships like that. And I think he recognized something about me that told him I would be easily manipulated. And he knew that he needed a sister that he was able to use to get his legal status and he wanted to keep his position in the religion. So he needed that right one to, like you said, he could control me, he could manipulate me, but I also had the background to where I could be that exemplary sister and support his service so that he could, keep his position in the religion.
And we just and I know we'll get ready, if Rick, if we have enough time, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes or less, just I say 5 to 10 minutes, I won't put a time on it, but if there were at least a couple of callers that if they had any questions for Keziak, they could, or even if they just wanted to share something. But right before we do that, Keziak, and we'll get ready to wrap up, I wanted to ask you, knowing that you went through all that you went through, and in your marriage, I can truly relate, not per se as far as someone having a status being one of Jehovah's Witnesses? Because I had been born and raised. Well, I wasn't born in as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but I was raised as one from the time I was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
And so my first husband, he was not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He actually used to go to church, and he ended up going to the Kingdom Hall after I got reinstated and went back. Went back, got reinstated, and then he started coming along. Um, and so I went through a lot of some of what you went through, not the legal status thing, but I wouldn't be surprised. I just want to throw this out there. If one or some of the brothers could have even already have known about him being illegal,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't
Yes.
say anything to you,
Yes.
because all too well they hide things. And so, but that abuse, I went through that too, so I can totally understand. I went through the same exact thing, going to the meeting, coming back, we going, until one time I got tired and I sat by
Yeah.
myself. But a brother got on me for doing that. So, but I didn't care what he had to say. And Gail, you know who I'm talking about. He had something to say, Brother Burton. He had something to say about that. Well, anyway, I'm sorry as well, just like Gail said, that you had to go through all that in order for that to lead up to your eyes being open. But I'm very glad that in the end your eyes were open and you could get away from that, because all too often,
Right.
my friend, she experienced that same thing. Her husband was very abusive and he too was an elder, so I can understand. And Rick, I wanted to say, just ask her one last question. Where are you today? From what you've been through, where are you today, right now?
Well, as far as the religion,
Yes.
I knew the day that I was disfellowshipped, I knew I made the right decision. I hadn't, up to that point, I had never felt the freedom that I did on leaving that Kingdom Hall and driving away from that.
Yeah.
I,
Wow.
I felt, yeah, so free and so happy, and I knew I had made the right decision. And ever since then, that was at the end of 2012. Ever since then, there has not been a point where I ever felt like I needed to go back. And I did,
Good.
when I first left, I felt consciously, I thought I just need a break. And once I have some space from the religion, I'll get my mind together and I'll go back. So I always left that as an option for myself. But as I, examined myself and my thoughts and everything, it just never, I was like, why? I did
Yeah.
not feel like it was somewhere where I needed to go back to.
That's
Wow.
right. Good for
We
you.
have a great question from the chat, from Jay. How did you get legally married if he was illegal?
Well, I would, and I talked to the, I think it was the city attorney in Florida, because I had that same question. I did not feel like, when I looked at the legal requirements, I did not feel like it could have been a legal marriage, because he did not have a valid social security number. He was using someone else's. So, and for that county, you had to have a social security number to register for the marriage. So he couldn't have legally registered for that marriage. But I didn't. Yeah. So I agree with you, Jay.
You didn't question it.
I asked that same question, and the city attorney kind of was like, "You may have a point, but we'd have to look into it further." And it just, at the time, I ended up getting a divorce from him, but at the time there was just so much going on that it was, I was like, I can't deal with this now, go through the whole process of trying to figure this out at this point.
And as a witness, we don't question anything when it comes. Well,
Right,
I won't say
right.
everybody, but just speaking on that, my first husband, the lady that he ended up marrying after us, she didn't even know that he um, was a sex offender and that he molested my middle daughter. She had no clue. The brothers didn't tell her. She found out only after he
Wow.
got locked up 2 months later, from speaking to me what he actually did. But she didn't question his background. She didn't look up anything. She had no clue. And they got married very quickly too, within like I think a month and a half or two of dating. So
Well, and
she
I didn't even think about that question. It wasn't it was the elders who asked me if the marriage was legal.
mm,
Wow.
That's what prompted me to research it. But I think they were asking me because they insinuated that it could be that I would be guilty of fornication if we weren't legally married. And so I
mm,
think they were looking at it from that aspect, unfortunately.
that's
Yeah.
Oh man.
that's
Wow.
sad.
Do we have anybody
Yeah,
questions?
Rick too.
Well, yeah, no, I want to come in because I have to really tell you, it's just
Mhm.
amazing. You are a very strong woman, and I can
Yeah.
see that, and that's really what has saved you and still is giving you a good attitude. You got a lot of strength there, Keziah.
Thank
And
you.
no, I'm serious, and I
Yeah.
want to thank you for coming on here tonight and telling your story. But we're going to open up the lines. We're going to open up the lines. We do have a number of people listening in here tonight. So listen, why don't you guys hit *6? Come on, say hello to Keziah. Let her know you're listening in. Let her know that she is really a strong woman. I mean, that's what I got from listening to this program tonight. That was really shocking. Some of the stuff this poor woman had to put up with. So why
Mhm.
don't you come in, say hello to Keziah. She needs a little pat on the back, and it would be wonderful to have you guys speak up. So go ahead, hit *6. Don't be bashful. Say hello to Keziah. Let her know that you are listening in tonight. And what do you think? I mean, do you think this is a normal way to go through life? This is
Mhm.
what the Watchtower does to people. This is what it does. It really creates a lot of issues in people's lives. So go ahead, hit *6. Come on. You're with us right now. Say hello. Give it a few seconds
Hello,
here.
Keziah.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to comment that you are such a strong woman, and I'm amazed at what you had to go through. But you did it with such dignity, and I appreciate that because your husband was really in the wrong and you were in the right. You were doing the right thing, but you tried to make Jehovah's Witnesses look good by keeping your silence, and I'm glad you finally didn't. So I just
Thank
admire you
you.
very much. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Well, there you go, Keziah. So anyone else want to speak up? There is a number of people still on the telephone line here tonight. So come
Are
on
you
now.
able to say where he was from
He
or no?
was from Haiti originally.
Haiti. Okay.
And really, I would
Mhm.
like to say that Haiti is a beautiful, amazing country, and the people there are beautiful and amazing. So this is not,
Aw,
he is not definitive of the people
Right.
that of Haitian people.
Right.
that's
So
right.
graceful. That was nice.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, lastly, before we, oh, go ahead. Sorry, it's a caller.
Go ahead.
Hey, this is Sharon from Alabama. Hey, Keziah, your story just blew my mind, and you're my hero.
Oh, thank you, Sharon.
That's all.
That is so sweet. Oh, that's
Thank you,
touching
Sharon.
too. Yeah,
Hmm.
because the first caller said, it was to make basically you were making Jehovah Witnesses look good. Everything that we were taught is when they say not to bring reproach upon Jehovah's name. No, that's not the case. It's not to bring reproach upon their name. They don't want their name
Right,
looking bad, and so that's all that is. So
right.
she said that very good. She had a great point. And I don't know, Rick, if there's anyone else on the line. If so, just interrupt me. But Keziah, I just want to personally thank you for coming on here, telling your story, because I know it's not easy. And then to do so publicly is not always the easiest thing. And I'm just glad that you chose this safe place and space to do so, because there are so many listeners here and people young, old, whatever,
Mm.
but we're all human and we all do have feelings. And so there probably people that are, like I said, new to being a witness, or maybe been a witness all their lives. I'm not really for sure, but whatever the case may be, your story needed to be told and it needed to be heard, so that it could also help others that may be going through similar, similar things that you went through, if not worse. So again, thank you for coming on after the storm, sharing that with us. I know we're very thankful to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for all the callers and listeners and everyone that's tuning in on YouTube Live. Just thank you all so much for being here. And thank you for the commenters too, for commenting and letting, because I know how strong that she was.
Yeah, thank you. We may need a
And
follow-up
is.
because I still have questions.
Oh,
Yes.
I
oh,
still have
thank
some
you.
questions, yeah, but
Thank you for
unfortunately.
this opportunity. And I just want to say to everyone listening, I'm going to try not to cry, but you are worth fighting for yourself and giving yourself the best life. So if you are part of the religion and you are struggling, you deserve better. So
Oh,
I just want to say that.
oh.
Well
I'm
said.
like goosebumps. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna
I'm
cry. I'm
sorry.
gonna just
No, no,
no,
no, no.
don't. You
That's
have
very
nothing to be sorry.
real. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
You
can.
don't know who that just touched.
I'm
That was
telling you.
very, very touching and heartfelt.
Yes,
I'm sure that
indeed.
touched someone because, everybody, there's a picture perfect image that you have to put forward.
Mhm.
And there's probably a lot of women suffering in silence, in an abusive marriage, in an
Yes.
abusive, inside an abusive religion. That's a double
Yes.
whammy. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Yes.
sharing that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Rick,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
and thank you
Thank you.
everybody.
Well, it was a wonderful program. It really, really was. And we're all crying with you, Keziah. We really, really are. The Watchtower's hurt so many people, but you're a wonderful lady. You got a full life ahead of you. And I'm glad that you're moving forward. You keep standing tall, Keziah. Keep waving that flag of victory because you're the winner. You're the winner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay, well, I guess we're going to end the program here. We're going to be going to Healing After the Watchtower. So, by all means, stay with us. We got a pasta babe coming on next. Well, she's the one that, well, she's your favorite apostate. So, she's coming on next. So, stay with us. We're going to disconnect the YouTube now, and YouTube will be back in about 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere.